All right, good evening to you out there. Welcome to the 573 report. I am Gabe DeArmond. On the other side of your screen is Mitchell Forde. And look, we're going to be real honest. I generally take a good amount of pride in our lack of preparation for these shows. This might have actually a little bit less preparation than most. I frankly was reading Twitter and talking with other people in sports media a lot of the day. Definitely a weird day for people in our business. So, look, we're going to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about largely tonight. You're here. Hopefully, at least some of you are. Hopefully, more of you roll in. Hopefully, you have some comments, questions, whatever. We will do that. Mitch, what's going on,
man? Not too much. Like as Baylor, but the show will go on, and I'm sure we'll talk a fair amount of basketball.
Yeah, we'll start there. Missouri, I guess, last time we saw them, beat Alabama in what is probably the best win of the year, right? I mean, fair to say that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Illinois game, I mean, that may end up looking a little bit better on a resume, and it is a rival. But in my mind, the Alabama win's a little bit more significant just because I think it tells you more later in the year. Like we've seen Missouri teams in the past beat Illinois and then not amount to all that much the past few years. So, beating a team that was undefeated in conference play certainly, says that the talk about Missouri contending for the SEC was, somewhat justified. I mean, they're probably not going to get there. They'd need Alabama to really screw up, but still, big win, no doubt.
And last I looked, and I'm looking at the score now, I mean, Alabama's up. There's only a minute 18 left, but they're only up 4 on South Carolina in Columbia. I think they'll probably hold on, but I was a little surprised that was as close as it was. So what do we make of the fact that that's Alabama's first SEC loss, and that just a week ago they went and got beat pretty bad by Oklahoma by an Oklahoma team that wasn't at full strength? What's that say about the SEC? That Missouri and Alabama, I think, have separated themselves as the top two teams.
Yeah, I think it definitely shows that the top end of the league is not all that impressive. Certainly I think the top end of the league is worse than the top end of the Big Ten for sure. Oh. The Big East, the Big 12. The ACC is actually kind of down, so it's probably kind of similar there. But yeah, I mean, like Alabama's obviously when they play well, they can beat absolutely anyone and they can crush anyone. Like some of those, games that wasn't just a reflection on the rest of the league being bad. That was them playing unbelievably well, and making a lot of threes. But since their shooting's kind of returned back to earth, I don't think they've been over 40% in any of their last, I think 5 games now, 4 or 5. And, they've found ways to win. Their defense has still been pretty good. They're pretty balanced, but it's not the same level of team. And I mean, basically just all these teams are flawed. Like, Missouri and Tennessee are somewhat similar. Tennessee even more so than Missouri, I think, just lacks kind of go-to guys on the offensive end. So, I mean, there are several solid teams in the SEC, but I don't think really many that you look at and say like, man, that team's really good or can, probably contend to win it all, unless Alabama starts playing like they were 2-3 weeks ago.
So sitting here today, how many teams in the SEC do you think, and using the term lock with a month left in the regular season is a little dumb because, yes, the bottom can fall out and almost anybody could still miss the tournament. But how many teams would you consider, barring the bottom falling out, being tournament locks in the SEC?
I think 4 are most likely in. I like not stone cold locks, but like you said, unless something real bad happened. I think Missouri, Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida are almost certainly in. Okay. Florida does, they've got some issues. They're on COVID pause right now, and they could fall out if they lose some games. And I would probably think Arkansas and LSU are both in as of today, but they're both pretty much hovering around that bubble line. I haven't looked at a bunch of bracketologies or anything, but could see them, around anywhere from a 9 seed to on the wrong side of the bubble, something around there. So, and then after that, I don't see anyone who's even got much of it, who's even all
Right.
that close. I mean,
Oh,
maybe if Ole Miss keeps winning,
yeah.
but that's really the only one.
Ole Miss could get in, I think, but they have to beat Missouri at least once and maybe twice.
Yeah.
I would say I would say it's three. I don't. I think Florida's still in that territory where it's got enough difficult games left. I mean, they're at Arkansas in a week. They're at Auburn. They're at Kentucky. Like, I think they've still got work to do. I would say Missouri, Tennessee, and Alabama are in almost regardless. And I want to be clear, like, I don't want to take away from what that win was for Missouri. As Steve says, it looks like they have a great chance of being number 2 in the SEC. I think that's now. I mean, it's certainly not. Look, we're barely over halfway through the. I guess for Missouri, we're exactly halfway through the league season. So there's things to be done, no question. But Missouri, that win was huge because now they've split the season series with Tennessee. So the tiebreaker, if it came down to them in Tennessee, would probably be how you did against the highest ranked team. That's Alabama.
Right.
Tennessee lost to them. Same situation could come into play with Arkansas. At the worst, Missouri's going to split with them. So they've got a lot of tiebreakers and things going in their favor by that win over Alabama. And, I mean, as much as the lasting impression kind of was the last 6 minutes and how bad it was, like, that was complete and utter domination for 34 minutes. I mean, that was one team that didn't even look like it belonged on the floor with the other team.
Yeah, really incredible to come out of a game like that where, Missouri beat a top 10 team. We're saying, biggest win of the season, probably in a few years, and dominated, like you said, for 34 minutes or 33 minutes. And yet you come away really and truly not knowing how to feel. I know we were texting after the game and just saying like, what do we think about that? Because, and I think, the more kind of removed I am, the more I think like, still, obviously the win is probably the thing you focus on most. And obviously they played better for longer than they didn't. But there's always a little bit of a, what could have been there. But yeah, like, I mean, I thought my biggest takeaway from the first however many minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, was that Missouri absolutely looked like Alabama could not match Missouri's energy. Missouri looked like that game meant more to them than it meant to Alabama.
Yeah.
They came out and just played so much harder.
Hey, well, and I thought somebody on our message board put it in pretty good perspective, actually, and said, look at the TCU game. That was like, it wasn't getting dominated for 36 minutes, but like you were behind significantly with 4.5 minutes left. And then because of what the last 4.5 minutes were, we come out of that game praising it and saying, oh, look, they never quit, blah, blah, blah. We tend to just focus on the last little bit as opposed to taking it as a whole thing. And, like Cornell Mann said today on the Zoom call, he said, well, the good news is we were up by enough that we had it to give away, and I do think you can't lose sight of that. I mean, teams have beaten Alabama, but nobody's done that to Alabama this year, which kind of indicates to me, like, what I think maybe we hadn't seen out of Missouri is show me the ceiling that, like, you could be in an Elite Eight game and win it, right? I mean, yeah, I know they beat Illinois, but that was a while ago, and it was kind of weird. Oregon hasn't been as good. So that game showed me if Missouri were to get to a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight, if they put it together, they're good enough to win that game. Like, their ceiling is Final Four caliber.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, that was really important in that way. And I think, even you could still come out of there and say too, like, they clearly haven't quite reached that. And they showed that it's there, but they still haven't put really. I mean, I can't really think of one game where it's like, man, they played a great full 40 minutes. And now that probably never happens. I mean, like, that's not something that happens a ton in college basketball, but still, there is even, room to go, but you kind of just got a glimpse of how high that ceiling is. And, I mean, too, like, they did it shooting like, 1 of 15 or 15% from 3 of 20, I think, from 3. You would hope that's a number that is better in tournament play, but with this team, that's not guaranteed. And I think one of my biggest takeaways of the past, few games and early on of the season is against TCU, like you mentioned, they came back. The offense caught fire when it needed to. They had 2 players combined for, I think it was 70 points, 69 points, something like that. 2 games later, those 2 players, I mean, they were fine, but they were kind of non-factors. And, you still beat the number 10 team in the country. So
Yeah.
that part, I think, bodes well for the tournament, that they're not, just totally reliant on one thing.
Yeah, South Carolina currently down 79-78 to Alabama with 2 seconds left, but Alabama is going to the line. It would take kind of a miracle, but it is still possible. I think the most impressive thing out of this Missouri team to me is the number of different ways they have won. They have won a game scoring 54 points. They have won a game giving up 98 points. They have won a game going 3 of 20 from three-point range, and they have won a game shooting 26% from the floor. I mean, when you can do all those things, I mean, again, and I've said this before, but I don't know the one thing they're really good at. Like, I don't know the one area where they excel, except scoring more points than the other team. And that's kind of the whole thing. That's the whole point of it.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that is part of why you're seeing, some of the analytics and projection-based sites not love them. They don't, there's nothing they do that you would say is really elite. Now, they do a lot of things well. They defend well for the most part. They get to the free throw line well. I think they still lead the SEC in free throws attempted per game. Obviously, Jeremiah Tillman is a very, very high-end big man. But, like you said, that there's not one thing that they, is kind of their calling card that they excel at that's going to jump off the page from a numbers standpoint. And, when you win a lot of close games, mathematically that's going to be chalked up to some sort of luck, because the odds are you win as many, you lose as many close games as you win. But I do think that's part of where we have to come in and say, like, at this point, this team clearly has confidence when it gets into a close game late, and that means something. That counts for something.
Yeah, I mean, they're the anti-Kentucky. Kentucky knows it's losing. It doesn't know how, but it knows it's losing. Missouri appears to kind of know it's winning in those situations, because it always has. So, and Danny says Alabama's going to lose a couple and couple more and get Missouri back in it. So let's just look at this kind of remaining schedules, because I think top 4 in the SEC is likely for Missouri at this point. So now we focus on, is there a way to get to 1? So let's say this, first of all. Alabama has to lose twice more. And even if Alabama loses twice more, one of the keys here is Missouri then has to be allowed to make up those LSU and Vanderbilt games, and it has to win them both, as well as the rest of the games. Because if even one of those games doesn't get made up, and Alabama were to finish 15-3 and Missouri were to finish 14-3, even though Missouri won head-to-head, Alabama's getting the 1 seed, right?
Right, yes, because the conference seeds are going to be based off win percentage, as Greg Sankey told us a couple weeks ago. So, Missouri has to play even if they're even in losses, Missouri would have to play the same number of games. And, Danny mentions Bama losing a couple, like, that may happen. Like, Missouri is going to be favored in at least 6 of his last 7, probably all of its last 7 games. I'm not talking about LSU and Vandy, although they'd probably be favored in both of those 2 at home. But, like, I'm not expecting them to run the table. It's possible, but like you just don't see it happen that often in college basketball. I mean, we saw last week how many ranked teams was it lost to unranked teams. It's just kind of part of the deal. So it is possible for Missouri to end up first in the SEC, but I think that's a bit of a long shot at this point.
I think Missouri's second toughest game left is probably tomorrow night in Oxford. Regular season finale as of now, because again, we don't know when they play LSU or Vandy, or if they play LSU or Vandy, would be at Florida. They may not be favored in that one, but let's just for grins, we pretend Missouri has gone 9-0 the rest of the way and sits 15-3. So Alabama just closed out South Carolina, beat them 81-78. So they are 10-1. Here's the rest of the schedule. I'm just going to go game by game and you tell me what you think. Home against Georgia.
That should be a win.
At Texas A&M.
That should be a win.
Home against Vanderbilt.
That should definitely be a win.
At Arkansas.
I mean, they're home against Arkansas, right? Because they were already at Arkansas.
No, they're at Arkansas.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got it mixed up. Yeah, I mean, you can see them dropping
losable,
it.
Right?
It's losable. Yeah.
At Mississippi State.
I mean, losable. Mississippi State played them tough, close at home the last time, but they'll be favored.
Yeah, Alabama's better, and then home against Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, never know in that one, but again,
if
they should win. I mean,
right, if Alabama's going in playing for an SEC regular season title, they already beat Auburn at Auburn. Auburn's playing for literally nothing. It's Auburn's last game. Auburn will play 0 more games after that. So, point is, I think worst case scenario for Alabama the rest of the way is 5-2, which puts them 15-3. Which means Missouri has to win every game on its schedule, get the LSU game back, win that, get the Vanderbilt game, win that. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. I don't think it's likely. Would anything less than that get Missouri a 1 seed? Like, I mean, I kind of feel like they have to win out, because the weird thing about Missouri's schedule is, yes, it does set up to get you some wins, but there's maybe one game left on the schedule that's really going to impress anybody. I mean, I know Ole Miss is a quad 1 win right now. So, yeah, it's helpful, but it's not like a top 20, hey, that's a 1 seed win.
Right. Yeah, no, 1 seed's, I don't think, super realistic for Missouri at that point. It was a lot like winning the league, like you said. I think that's what they'd have to do, is probably win out and win the SEC regular season.
Yeah, I think they'd have to win out and then probably win at least one.
At least get to
they might have to get to the SEC tournament final.
Yeah, I would kind of think so. The thing is they're already kind of operating from behind, like it or not. Like, it is what it is. They're part of the formula is those performance metrics, and that factors into their net ranking, and they're 25th right now. I mean, you don't see a lot of teams jump up 20 spots in the net in the 6-week span or whatever it's going to be. So
3 weeks, yeah, especially when playing teams that are below them in the net. Like, they are supposed to beat every team they play the rest of the way. And the other thing is, look, Baylor's got one locked up. Baylor is getting a 1 seed. Gonzaga is getting a 1 seed. Michigan or Ohio State is getting a 1 seed. And frankly,
the winner of the Big Ten.
Right.
Yeah, the winner of the Big Ten's getting one, and someone else.
The runner-up might get one. I mean, Ohio State has more quad 1 road wins than almost anybody else in the country has quad 1 wins, period. And Michigan is a top 5 team. It's just, I think the ceiling for this Missouri team is a 2 seed.
Right. And I don't think, certainly, that that's nothing to be disappointed about. I know, the conversation has shifted so much lately. It's funny, we went so long with people being like, is this team for real? I can't decide. And now all of a sudden it's, can they win the SEC? Can they get a 1 seed? So, enjoy that. That's fun.
Yeah. And Todd Julian brings up, says that Happy Conzo was able to adjust his team style of play. Most coaches never evolve. So let's start with that. And Mitch just kind of, rerun what Cornell Mann said on the Zoom call today. And while we're talking about this topic, guys, and we got a couple others, please, we invite your questions, your comments, all that. Like we said, we're relying on you tonight. So whatever you want to talk about, whether it's basketball related, football, you can ask about softball. I don't know. Maybe Mitch has been studying up on that. I have personally not, but whatever you want to talk about, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, non-sports questions, you can get weird.
Right.
It's fine. Whatever. I got invited to a wedding on here recently, so. But yeah, no. So I really do think that probably the single biggest difference between Missouri the last couple years and Missouri this year has been pace of play. Jeremiah Tillman is right up there as well, but pace of play has been huge, and that was very much on display Saturday. I mean, Alabama, is a top 10 team in the country in terms of pace, and Missouri was definitely the aggressor there, and Alabama was unprepared for it. I mean, they were pushing the pace, every time they could. They beat Alabama down the floor for a lot of baskets, and then honestly, when they tried to slow it down, that's kind of when things fell apart. It was interesting. We talked to Cornell Mann on Zoom today, and he basically said Conzo wanted to do this before, but just he basically just didn't have faith in the guys to take good.
They turned it over too much. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they turned the ball over too much, and Missouri basically didn't have the scoring and the shooting to overcome that many turnovers. So that was interesting to hear. And I do think, it was funny. We talked to Conzo about it earlier in the year, and he said watching the games from past years, he's like, man, why did I coach like that? So clearly there is, maybe some element of he could have done it sooner. But I do think that's a big part of, having a team you trust and a bunch of veterans and upperclassmen.
And so here's the the thing that I would nominate for the biggest difference, and I don't know if he did this out of necessity or out of he saw it. I'm not sure why it was. But look, in the first 3 years of covering Cuonzo Martin, like at some point I gave up on trying to keep track of his substitutions. It was dizzying how quickly, like I remember the first game that Michael Porter Jr. played, like I remember I had kind of thought at about the 12-minute mark, oh, that's weird. He hasn't been on the floor for a while. But it was because, I mean, he went out with 17 and a half minutes left, and like Cuonzo did that with other guys too. There were always substitutions before the first TV timeout, so it took a minute to realize. But my point is he started this season with an 8-man rotation, and he pretty much knew what it was. And it really hasn't changed. Now, yes, Pickett has gone in for Mark Smith in the starting lineup, but the core 8 guys, the only difference is every now and then Parker Brown might get a few more minutes, or every now and then Torrance Watson might get a few more minutes. But that's it. He knows his rotation. The substitutions haven't changed. The minutes haven't changed. And I just think, especially with a veteran team, that's a big deal. Like he's not, and you can argue whether in the past he was he searching for an answer and that's why the substitutions happened so much, or were the substitutions happening so quickly that nobody could get a rhythm and that's why he was searching for an answer? I don't know, but I think it's a big difference this year.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And honestly, I mean, it does also go back to like what you do have to talk about a little bit with him in Missouri, which is injuries. You know, that it's part of the reason they've been able to have a stable rotation this year is because they've had everyone available for the most part. Obviously, Javon Pickett wasn't this past Saturday. But yeah, you know, I do agree 100% that, you know, there is noticeable that he has tightened up the rotation, and you know he still likes to get various people in early in the game, but I think it's just less, you know, he's less prone to, you know, say Xavier Pinson commits a turnover, he's coming out right away, stuff like that. You know, someone takes a bad shot, he's coming out right away, and I think it's similar to the pace of play thing. It's just he trusts these guys. He knows what he has at this point.
So I'm pretty confident saying neither one of us has a vote, but is he the SEC Coach of the Year?
I'd have to see, you know, I probably have to see how the season plays out. I mean,
I'm just talking about as of today.
As of today, I guess, yeah. I don't know. It's clearly him or Nate Oates,
right?
And I do think
Calipari, will he get votes? You think?
He might. You never know. The Kentucky
the Kentucky media might vote for him.
Although but they also everyone at Kentucky hates him.
They actually hate their team so much this year. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you could make really compelling cases for both. You know, Nate Oates, what he's done so quickly there, and just kind of, I feel like, you know, how the unique style he's implemented, and to win 10 straight league games is impressive if you're just looking at league games. But Missouri's, had a better season overall than Alabama, and I'm pretty sure was picked lower in the preseason.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I have a hard time imagining Alabama was
picked 5th and Missouri was 10th.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that should matter in these things, but it does. So, yeah, I've just talked myself into it. As of today, Cuonzo Martin, SEC Coach of the Year.
See, that's the thing. I think that the Coach of the Year award has turned into the guy that has a team that is better than we thought it was in November, which was based on nothing other than what we thought, right? Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, well, they've overachieved. Well, based on what? They've actually just achieved. The only thing they've overachieved is what idiots like us thought about them based on nothing. Look, I don't know, man. If Alabama gets to 17-1, like, I think I'd have to vote for Nate Oates. And I know the one loss would be at Mizzou and all that, but, you know, Mizzou lost more. If Bama runs the table from here on out, I think it's got to be Nate Oates. As of today, I think I'd probably vote for Oates, but it would be, like, I would have to sit down and make a pros and cons list between Oates and Cuonzo for the choice. It wouldn't be an easy choice either way. All right, so we've got some basketball questions kind of rolling in here, and Keegan had a two-parter, and I'm going to save part 2. So he says, does having a top 10 or 15 regular season team signal that that basketball is headed in the right direction under Cuonzo, or do they have to prove something in the NCAA tournament? So, look, clearly this is going the right way, right? I mean, this season, it's a good season. Let's say, Missouri goes 6-1, 5-2 down the stretch, whatever it is, wins about close to 20 games in the regular season, tops 20. Like, that's a good year regardless of what happens in March. But by the time Missouri tips off in the NCAA tournament, somebody did the math for me on this, it's going to be 4,017 days since the last time they won a tournament game. Like, this program needs a tournament win. Like, it's kind of like Gary Pinkel said when he took the job. He said, I didn't create these problems, but I inherit them. They're now my problem. Like, it is now Cuonzo Martin's problem that this team hasn't won an NCAA tournament game since I was in my early 30s. Yeah. I mean, that's since you were 15. Like, you couldn't drive the last time Missouri won an NCAA tournament game. That's
true. That's incredible.
Insanity. So, like, they kind of have to win at least one, right?
Yeah, it really is almost unfair that so much importance is put on March for college basketball coaches, because literally anything can happen in a single elimination format, as Missouri fans are well aware. But like
is there any specific example of that, or?
Oh, no, nothing's mind of games they maybe should have won or not lost. As a high seed. But anyway, that is what is, ultimately gets the most attention and how seasons are judged. So, I mean, like, I think, I know people always talk about, that was a Sweet 16 and Elite 8 team, a Final Four team. And obviously, Final Four just trumps everything else. If you, you could be like South Carolina a few years ago and be bad and make the Final Four, and it's still a great year. But I think they need to win at least one game. That you can't have, especially if they're going to be seeded as high as we think they are. You almost that would almost invalidate everything else this season, I think, and especially just from a frustration standpoint, if they were to lose to a high seed like that in the first round.
Well, and that's the other thing, because Missouri is now they will be seeded likely to make the Sweet 16. And so, look, if you lose a 4-5 game in the second round, it happens. But, like, you can't end this season with a loss to a double-digit seed in the first round. It won't invalidate the season. It won't wreck the program. Cuonzo's not going to get fired, anything like that.
Right.
But you got to get one.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't implying, it would put him on the hot seat or anything. I know that was part of Keegan's question, but yeah, I do think, yes, it just changes. It changes so much to have like you said, a normal lose to a 6 seed or lose to a 5 seed in the second round or a 4 seed, wherever they're at, versus losing to a double-digit seed. It makes the season feel completely different. Yeah,
and the second part of Keegan's question is, does a first-round exit put him on the hot seat going into next season? I see nothing that puts Cuonzo Martin on the hot seat going into next season. And after this year, I see nothing that gets Cuonzo Martin fired next year. Like, he's coaching at minimum of 2 seasons after this, right? Yeah, because, he's shown what he can do at this point with a team full of guys he developed. So if he has a bad year, what he can point to is, that's going to happen when you're doing a bunch of 3- and 4-year guys and you need one class to kind of come along and be special. And hopefully we just got those guys, and I'll prove it to you over these next few years. Now, then if he doesn't, we have a different discussion. But, this type of season hasn't happened that often for Missouri, so it's going to buy him a little bit of equity. And he, I believe, I didn't look this up, but I was kind of going off memory. He originally signed a 6-year contract, which means he would have 2 years left. But that NCAA tournament bid the first year automatically added one. So he's got 3 more years on his contract. He is under contract till April 1st of 2024. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah. So he's fine. And I know every day people are worried about next year, and the message board is going to be full of, well, this year's fine, but like he's gonna get fired next year if he goes 10-20. No, he's not. He just isn't. Whatever you want to think, it's not going to happen. Justin, and appreciate everybody watching and joining. And real quick, before I get to this, I should have done this at the top of the show, but we've got more people here now than we did at the top of the show, so it works better now. Go to 573tees.com. That is, they sponsor the 573 report every week, and we want to send you over there. Sadly, there is not any Super Bowl 55 champion shirts available at 573tees.com unless they're making Buccaneers gear, in which case we have to discuss the sponsorship of this show. But maybe you can still get some Super Bowl 54 gear. Maybe you can get some Mizzou Hoops gear, things like that. So go check them out, 573tees.com. Throw them some support for all the support they've given us throughout this whole very bizarre year, and we want to help them out too. So Justin says, so many years of Mizzou finding ways to lose games, it's still hard to accept the fact they are finding ways to win games. Still worried about that collapse. And Mitch, I think that is the most common text I've gotten. I'm not used to Missouri winning these games, so it's just weird for me to see Missouri winning these games. I must have gotten 6 texts that said that after Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. I've heard similar stuff from a lot of people and thought it myself. I mean, I think I've typed several times in post-game thoughts or whatever, closing thoughts posts this year, well, that's not a thing we normally see. Usually Mizzou would be on the other end. So yeah, I mean, that's, maybe you're just trading in all the built up, bad luck for good luck, or equaling out that karma.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Cam Cameron is asking about Javon Pickett. And so, look, here's the lesson we learned again on, I guess it would have been Saturday. Or was that not Saturday? Yeah, Saturday was the last game. Saturday, so on Friday, I went out of my way to ask Hanzo Martin, how's Javon? Fine. He's practicing. He's fine. Javon Pickett played 18 seconds and went back to the bench and couldn't play. Hanzo Martin's definition of fine just is not our definition of fine. His definition of fine means he is alive. He appears to be able to functionally move around. He's not going to play, but I'm going to tell you he's fine. So the truth is, we know Javon is alive. We have no idea if he's going to play tomorrow. And I believe Mitch has frozen up. We'll give him a second to see if he unfreezes. Correct. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Are you back with us?
Actually practice almost in. Okay. Am I back?
Okay.
Am I back?
You are currently back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I back? Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah. Okay. So anyway, so I talked to someone at the game on Saturday who did say that Pickett practiced and actually did a lot at practice on Friday, the day before the game. And just, one of those things where he started warming up Saturday and it got tight. So that can't happen with ankle injuries. And it was interesting. Cornell Mann did actually say today, Pickett can kind of be his own worst enemy at times because he hates missing practice, and he will literally practice on one leg if you let him. So you kind of have to step in and be like, whoa, we need you for this game. You can, take today off. So perhaps they've done that since Saturday.
And I mean, Javon's been around here. I think practice is really overrated, right? He's been around here a while. I saw a story today that, Mahomes has to have a walking boot and he's missing the offseason. I don't care if that dude ever practices again. Javon Pickett knows what practice is. He'll be fine to show up and play the game. I think I hope
Pickett has a practice. We talking about practice quote at after the next game. Because he obviously watches the show. He
doesn't strike me as the kind of guy to really give us a quote that would be that good, but that'd be good if he did. Okay, yeah. I must have missed something. Kevin Larson is asking about a Culver Stockton defensive back that tweeted he was coming to Missouri. Do you know anything about this?
I saw it briefly on the message board, and I'm pretty certain it's a walk-on, but that's all I know.
Yeah,
I know nothing else.
Yeah, have to assume it is a walk-on. I at best a Boo Smith situation where at best a Boo Smith situation where he could walk on and maybe earn a scholarship down the road. But look, I'm sure that Culver Stockton has a good program. I'm sure those kids work hard. The chances that Eli Drinkwitz is offering one of his 3 remaining scholarships to a guy that played last year at Culver Stockton seems low to me. I don't know. Let's see. South Carolina had a terrible play to end the game against Bama, made a layup down 3 with 4 seconds left. Yeah, I mean, it seems like you would want to shoot a 3 in that situation. That would be more likely.
It does. I'm no coach. I also didn't watch it, so it's hard to. But I'm going to react based entirely on this message and say yes.
Right.
Fire Frank Martin.
Yeah, Frank Martin, terrible coach. Good interview though. I like him.
Yeah, he is.
Ron's asking, how would you grade Konzo's tenure in the macro? I always have to remind myself that means big picture, right? Micro is the small. How much
Correct.
of what happens the rest of this year influences the grade by the end of the year? I mean, he gets graded almost on two separate curves, right? The first curve is, I mean, he just took over like a trash heap. I don't mean to be mean. I liked some of the kids on that team. They just weren't good at winning basketball games at that time. So that is the first curve. And then the second curve is, this really is the first time he's had his actual team on the floor. Now, I think, last year, injuries to Tillman and Smith, I don't put those in the same category as the first 2 years, where he legitimately lost his best player within, hours of the start of the season. Last year's different. I saw them with Tillman and Smith, and they weren't any good before that. So, that's not great. But overall, I don't know, like a B so far?
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the season does, play a big part. But, I mean, I look at it kind of as coming into this season, he had one very, very good year, one disappointing year, and one where it's kind of, I would almost say, an incomplete. It's just like, bad injuries, I don't know. We'll see. And that's why this year was kind of important, because if it was really good again, you could say, okay, he's been good for the majority of his tenure so far. And, again, like I mentioned earlier, shown the ability to develop these guys. If he's not going to get the really high caliber recruits, put together a class that's going to stay together and be able to win. Or if it went the other way, obviously you'd say since that first class, it's been, declining or whatever. So I'd say, depending on how this year finishes, anywhere from, B plus, something like that.
In the absence of Bob Douglas on this particular show inviting Mitch to a wedding, Danny Ragland has my favorite comment that Konzo would describe your internet connection as, quote, fine. So.
Yeah, I mean, it gets me on the air.
It does.
Sort of.
Sometimes it keeps you on the air. So we'll see how it goes. See if we can keep it up for another, I don't know, few minutes, however long this goes. Okay. Tiercell wants to know, will Tillman be first team All-SEC? I mean, the last 7 games have a lot to do with it. As of today, I think so. Right?
Yeah, I do too. I mean, especially if people fill out their ballot based off of actually going position by position, which I think you should. Picking one center who's been the best in the league this year, I think it would be Tillman. I would think so. His numbers on the season, don't absolutely blow you away, but if you're looking at conference play, I mean, he's been really good, and you can't watch a Missouri game without noticing how much he impacts the game. So I think he probably will. He's obviously, it's dipped to these past few games. It depends if teams continue to pay him the attention they have these past couple of games, then maybe not. But if he gets to play against Jamie Dixon again, then absolutely, because that was remarkable how he just said, I'll guard him with one defender all night, and it didn't work out.
Well, and so much of the all-conference stuff will be in. Again, the SEC puts 8 guys on its all-conference team, which
the coaches do that, but I think the media puts 5, which is clearly because we're much smarter and understand how basketball is played than the coaches.
Right, yeah. But so much of that has to do with team success, right? I mean, Jeremiah is leading the league in field goal percentage, and he is he's third in rebounds. So you look at Scottie Pippen Jr. is averaging 21 points a game. Vanderbilt hadn't won a game in the league. I think that'll be held against him, even though he's second in scoring and second in assists. Scottie Pippen Jr. should make the all-league team, in my opinion. Severe Wheeler's averaging 7.5 assists, but Georgia's bad. He's not going to make the team. DJ Stewart and Iverson Molinar are in the top 5 in scoring in the league, but they're certainly both not going to make the team from Mississippi State. And then it will also become, I think, people will vote for a Missouri player. A Missouri player will make the team, But I think some people, if they vote for Drew Smith, will say, yeah, Tillman's not on my team because I'm not going to have two Missouri guys. When you've got Cameron Thomas leading the league in scoring, you've got
Sharif Cooper.
Sharif Cooper, Javonte Smart from LSU. Alabama's a weird thing because, I don't even know who for sure Alabama's best player is.
I think it's probably Herb Jones, but the stats don't necessarily
banged up
bear that out.
Right.
Yeah, he has. That's true. Yeah, I don't know. I think Alabama and Missouri and even Mississippi State to a far lesser extent have kind of the same problems where, clearly Alabama and Missouri are good teams, but no one stands out super far above the others from a statistical standpoint. So, it is probably, you're not going to say well, I'm not putting two guys who have lesser stats, on the first team just because they play for a winning team. So I'll be interested to see. I think on that team, the coaches team, which has 8 guys, I think Tillman will for sure make it because A, more spots, and B, I do think the coaches specific, every coach mentions him, is kind of the key to slowing down Missouri. So I feel better about his chances there. And then, Drew Smith will probably make a team, and I assume Xavier Smithson has a pretty good chance at making a team as well.
Yeah, Drew Smith is kind of a little tiebreaker here. He just got named SEC Player of the Week for the 3rd time this year. It's kind of hard to say a guy who was the best player in the league in a third of the weeks we played is not on the first team, So
yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a possibility. I really kind of thought we were past answering this question again, but Steve is asking how the Porter family feels about Mizzou and whether Javon Porter would come. I don't know if I guess he's that level of player. I don't know. I don't expect to see another Porter at Missouri, not because they hate Missouri or anything like that. Just, I think
I'm pretty sure. Didn't Javon already commit somewhere? I think he did, but maybe I'm thinking of a different Porter.
I think you're thinking of Coben, who is
maybe, but I kind of think Javon did too. I'll look at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If Schiff's still watching, he'll let us know. I know he's in there earlier.
Yeah, he is kind of the Porter correspondent. So he probably does know. I don't know. I don't see everything.
The fact that it's not on my radar would suggest that my answer, which is no, he's probably not ending up at Missouri.
Yeah, I don't think so. But again, I don't think it's because the family hates Missouri or anything. They started, Mike just started they're funding an AAU team. I've heard talk of building a facility for him in Columbia. So, Missouri continues to certainly promote everything he does on social media. So, so Kevin Larson cleared it up. Javon has committed to Pepperdine. So, no.
And Coben's going to prep school, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Pepperdine coach is Lorenzo Romar, who Mike and Jonte were initially going to play for. So, no, he will not end up at Missouri. And largely, I think it's because, I don't think Missouri and Pepperdine recruit a lot of the same kids, right? Schiff is going to bill us for getting that information, but Kevin Larson got us that information first, Schiff, so sorry, dude. Nothing for you.
Yeah.
I thought the Nets played tonight, Schiffer. I appreciate you watching, but, Anyway.
We are more compelling television than Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and James Harden.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, 100.
That's what this tells me.
I don't know. I would listen to Kyrie Irving talk about some things, man. He'll say
I know. We're talking about them playing versus us talking. Okay. We are more compelling. Obviously, that's what my takeaway is from this.
And I would rather watch them talking than me playing as well. So, all right. Yeah. So Matthew Smith has a professional question. Being with that our dads both did this. One of them actually still does this. One of our dads just hangs out on the beach now. But, did they encourage, discourage, or remain neutral when you were choosing your career path? I don't know about you, Mitch. My dad was cool with it. Because I never wanted to do anything else. I do remember at one point I thought about switching from broadcast to print, and he told me not to do that. He said there was far more money in TV. Not sure.
What he didn't know at that point was how big our YouTube channel would be.
Fair. Yes. He did not know that I could meld all my skills into one glorious production here on the 573 report every Wednesday night. No, but he was good with it. I think you just want your kid to do something they want to do. And I'm not really qualified to do anything else. All I really know about is sports, and I can't play them. So I don't know what else I was going to do.
Yeah, I was somewhat similar. My dad was pretty neutral. There were definitely times where he would, push me to be like, "Are you sure this is what you really want to do? It's not just watching sports. Like, you do
Right.
have to do this other stuff." And I was like, "Well, that doesn't sound as good, but I guess it's
Right.
still worth it." So, yeah. I mean, he was always supportive, always helpful. As helped me anytime I've asked for it, and other times,
When you
but
haven't. Yeah.
not like you should be my protege or something. So, yeah.
Right. My son actually did at one point. My oldest did say that he would kind of like to do my job if it wasn't for the writing, and so I said, "So you would like to just go watch
Yeah, that's tough.
games?" Like, me too, man. That sounds great.
Everyone would like to be paid to do that, I think. Yeah.
Right. If you would find someone who would let me do that, that would be phenomenal, and I would go there. Schiffer does confirm that he is currently watching the 573 report while the Nets play, and as big as we've gotten, I believe he is fortunate enough to not have the Athletics NBA editors watching our show, so they don't know he is on here right now. If they do, though, Schiff, I don't know, man. You're in trouble. You might be coming back. Okay, Tyler Wynn, with regards to potential conference tournament opt-outs, does the fact that an SEC tournament win would mean more for a school like Mizzou impact the decision? And he's talking about winning the league tournament. Look, winning the league tournament just isn't the goal. I mean, I said this I did a podcast with a couple of other SEC guys. I said, first of all, if I was Missouri, I wouldn't play. And second of all, if they said, no, you have to play, I would say, okay, Jeremiah Tillman and Drew Smith and Xavier Pinson all sprained their ankles in practice yesterday. And Mark Smith's sick. So, like, none of those guys can come. So here's my lineup. It's Ed Chang, Jordan Wilmore, Parker Brown, Torrance Watson, and I don't know, pick another guy. That's my team. That's who we're going to come with.
Bring Beef Yerky back.
Right. Yeah. And absolutely bring one of the walk-ons back. Go down to Nashville, lose your first game by 15 points, and get the hell out of Dodge and go play the NCAA tournament. Because, look, I know you can tell me that Missouri won the Big 12 tournament in 2012 in their last year in the league. If you can tell me, just without looking it up, what Missouri's conference tournament results are in any other year since 2012, I'll be pretty impressed. I mean, the highlight, I think, of conference tournament week was Kim Anderson telling people to shove it up their asses. Outside
Absolutely.
of that,
Yeah.
nobody remembers anything about the conference tournament. They remember what you did in March. And again, it has been 4,000 days since they won a game. Winning the SEC tournament doesn't matter.
Yeah, first of all, I have several thoughts. One, though, I have to start that not only was that moment from Kim Anderson the highlight of Missouri's SEC tournament tenure, it was probably the highlight of my 4 years of college for Missouri basketball during that span, which shows you the tough time I was at school. But yeah, so it's tough. Like, I hate that. I agree with you kind of, because I love conference tournaments. I think they're a lot of fun, and that's when a lot of people kind of start getting really dialed into college basketball before the main deal. For Missouri fans to and capable of winning the SEC tournament would be a lot of fun. Constructed, I don't know if it's worth the risk, because you have to test negative 7 straight days in order to play in the NCAA tournament. So if you have someone, I mean, anyone gets it in Nashville, they're 100% not playing in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, and probably not the second weekend either. So I just there's just too much outside of your control. I think you're better off probably staying kind of bubbled up in Columbia. I think the leagues are going to have to make some sort of concession, make it more of a strict bubble type deal, something to try to get these teams to play, or just say, yeah, we're fine with it. Kentucky win the league tournament and take a spot in the NCAA tournament.
I just don't think the league is going to say, yeah, it's cool if you want to skip it. Maybe they will.
No, I don't either.
So I don't expect that to happen. And honestly, I don't expect Konzo Martin to skip it. I don't
probably
think,
not.
I think the kids would say they want to play, and I think they'd go play, and you can't tell them not to play. And I understand I'm looking at this from a big picture perspective, but look, there is going to be someone somewhere in America that ends up missing the NCAA tournament. I'm not talking about a player. I'm talking about a team that ends up missing the NCAA tournament because they got contact traced in their league tournament. And, God, that would be awful. I mean, just devastating to – I mean, what if it's Drew Smith? He's never played in it before. You know, I think Jeremiah Tillman and Mitchell Smith were on the Missouri team that was in the tournament.
Yeah, and Mitchell
was hurt.
Redshirted.
Yeah.
Here, I'm pretty certain. Or was hurt. Yeah. So, Tillman's the only one who has appeared in an NCAA tournament game at Missouri.
So, I mean, telling these kids, you know, oh, yeah, sorry, we bumped into somebody who had it in Nashville. Or, like, look, a false positive can happen here, right? A false positive could knock you out of the NCAA tournament. And could it happen here? Sure, it could.
Yeah.
But, you know, and look, I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole, but, like, I got really irritated when I saw that North Carolina players had sent out an apology today for partying without masks after they beat Duke. I mean, is that where we're at, that college kids are now apologizing for being college kids? Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there was like some sort of real repercussion in that regard, but yes, I agree. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think there's going to be an SEC tournament. I think Missouri's going to play in it. You know, we'll cover it. I wouldn't do it, but nobody asked me. I mean, I don't know. I've been doing this for 17 years, and not one time have I gotten a call from somebody at Missouri that said, "What should we do here?" You know, how would the 573 report handle this? You know, so
yeah. That Conso does sometimes at press conferences randomly not as much now that we're on Zoom. Actually, I can't think of a time at Zoom, but there have been times a lot when we're in person that at the end he'll be like, "Okay, everyone done? Well, what did you think about that one?" And he'll just pick someone. And so maybe that'll happen this time. Maybe he'll say, "Gabe, should we play in Nashville?"
Well, I'll tell him they should not. My favorite Consoism in person was always like he would get done and he would just go, "How'd a football team doing?"
He would. We're like, often in like February, and we're like, well, about the same. I haven't played in a few months.
Not doing much, man. But check Twitter. You'll see.
But when he asks you, make sure you include that Evan Yerkes needs to come back.
Okay, I will do that. I would play the SEC tournament with Beef Yerkes or Yerkes, or I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Beef Yerke.
Yeah. So anyway, appreciate you guys joining us. Cutting it a little bit short tonight. Because, look, I feel like we've covered it. I don't know. I guess tomorrow night at 8, right? 8 o'clock games are terrible. That shouldn't happen. But
I agree. There's just a huge difference between a 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock tip. But yes, tomorrow at 8.
All right, tomorrow at 8, Mizzou and Ole Miss. That means I will be on this channel at 7 o'clock. Mitch might even join me for a few minutes beforehand. We'll talk with Neil McCready. We'll do postgame. We'll do all that. So thanks for watching. One more time before you log off. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, but more importantly than that, go to 573tees.com when you get done here. Buy yourself a T-shirt or whatever else, the other wonderful merchandise they have. Just go pick something up from them because they make this possible. They give you endless hours of entertainment, or at least 1 hour every Tuesday or Wednesday night. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you later on.